what is on my mind right now is that we are taking over our parents' finances. They're in their 80s. And I'm really struggling right now with being frustrated with that process. And I ping pong between being
Mm,
frustrated at them for being old. And of course, that's unreasonable. And I go to being frustrated with organizations that are probably unintentionally taking advantage of them. And that I get frustrated, thirdly, with myself because I'm not there and I'm not physically with them and able to care for them the way that I had foreseen most of my life. And so I'm struggling with this. What am I actually mad at? And what do I do with that frustration?
wow, that's a lot. Let's unpack that a little bit. So what is the initial frustration that comes at you when we're starting to sit down and do these things?
So I'll start with a story, which originally we found humorous. My daughter pointed it out and we thought it was quite funny. And then as I got into it and I actually did a TikTok about it, I realized it's not that funny. It's quite frustrating, actually. And that is that as we take over their finances, I had created a list of all of their payees over a 12-month period to make sure that all their bills are paid and that they're not losing anything. And what I found was a lot of duplicate accounts. So they had
Mm.
2 subscriptions to Disney Plus. They had 3 subscriptions to Sirius XM radio and a bunch to different magazines and newspapers that they never read. So we'll clean all of that up. But what my daughter pointed out as we were scrolling through some of the payees is that they have 2 subscriptions to Cancel Hero. The whole purpose of Cancel Hero is
No,
to cancel duplicate subscriptions and subscriptions you don't need.
girl.
So my first reaction was that's very funny. Let's
That is
leave room
pretty
for that's
funny.
very
That is
funny.
pretty funny.
And then immediately after, my frustration is should companies be charging elderly people for decades when they have the same credit card, same email address, same billing address, and same credit card on file? Should they really be allowing duplicate accounts? And I know that my parents probably set them up themselves years apart where they've forgotten that they've done it before, but it just seems very irresponsible on a corporate level. And then I was struggling with what is the mechanism by which they would prevent that or reverse that, prevent or reverse that. And then it's not really their responsibility, but then I got angry that not enough people are caring, not enough corporations are caring for older adults.
Wow. What occurs to me is when you say, like, how can we systemically make a change so that corporations don't have the ability to take advantage of seniors like that? The first thing that comes to my mind is like, that just is not gonna happen because there's no incentive for the big corporations and the systems to be responsible. And right now, with all the deregulation that's occurring, there's even less incentive because they're actually being rewarded for taking advantage of people.
I think it's even more shallow than incentive, though. And I think it is so ultra automated that the company or a person in the company probably doesn't even know that they have 2 accounts and that they're paying on 2 accounts. So
But that
it
makes
wasn't
it
just the
even worse because if
yes,
it's
yes.
automated, that should be like as simple as writing in code. If there's a duplicate, flag it.
But you're right, they're making twice the money.
Yeah.
And honestly, the person who did it, the family who did it twice or 3 times.
But that's part of the problem is that we're not unique in that. You know, this is
Right.
it's a generational problem and we are talking about the traditionalists and the boomers who are aging into this and the boomers are a lot of people. So this
Right.
is happening like on a massive scale in this country that people are being taken advantage of and quite frankly, I went into one of my social media accounts and I had too many profiles. I had created profiles for things that I wasn't even doing anymore. And it took me almost 45 minutes to figure out how to delete a profile because it was so hard. And I think that a lot of these systems are they're setting systems that make it really, really hard to cancel. And they make it almost impossible if you are aging and starting to kind of slip a little bit on keeping track of everything. They make it really difficult to even understand what it is that you just did. Because there were things on the list, if I remember correctly, that they had never even heard of before, which I
Right.
think isn't, they probably did when they signed up for it, but it wasn't something that registered. And so they were paying for things that they claim they have no memory of.
It could be any number of reasons. Maybe the promise was you get a 3-month subscription and then
Mhm.
deep in the small print, and then forevermore. We'll just recharge you every month or every
Yeah.
3 months. So I think it's even more than the fact that they're aging and things become more complicated with eyesight and memory issues. I think one of the major issues is that they are not tech natives. We're not even tech natives. We're
Right.
Gen X and we're not even tech natives, but we were young enough when tech really started booming that we could adapt pretty easily. But these were people who adopted this technology late in their career when they were thinking about retiring and they didn't really use it at work and probably used it at home more for fun than for function. So they're not used to how the technology is working.
That is a big problem. It's a huge problem. So changing the system feels a little bit outside of my ability. It's outside of my own sphere of influence. So what can we do to help protect those that are in our sphere of influence?
I think we're doing what we can do, and that is to help them take a look at their finances and see what they're paying for and reduce some of those things for them. So I can tell you, and you know this quite well, that the process of transferring responsibility for paying bills and managing subscriptions from an aging parent to an adult child is very, very complicated.
Yeah, it is because not only is it complicated task-wise, but it's complicated emotion-wise.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
part of what I have discovered in this whole process is that transitioning from being someone's child to being someone's parent has a whole baggage of emotions, and also it's quite a journey that every person involved has to take. And the reason that I can say transition from child to parent is because our dad has claimed us as his moms now.
Right.
So when he talks about us in the context of his assisted community, he jokes with the other residents there that he's got two mommies now. And they all agree. They all agree that they all have mommies who were their kids who are now kind of stepping into the parenting role. And so that whole journey has been part of the process that just adds layers and layers of complexity onto an already complex problem.
So we're going through a lot with our parents right now, and I'll be transparent because I think this is relevant to many people our age in this process of becoming caregivers for our parents.
Mhm.
It's just so layered, and I've seen both of our parents in all of the different things that we're doing. So the finances, the power of attorney, the medical issues that they're going under, the moving their homes, selling of their home. It's a lot of very big deal things that are going on right now. And I have seen both of them once or twice in the past couple of months while they're going through these transitions balk at it and simultaneously balk at it and really feel relief that we're taking it over. So it's a lot
Mm.
like raising
Mhm.
a child from 18 to 25. They're going to balk at being left to be an adult, but they're also going to really want the help. So it's
Yeah.
kind of both sides, but this duality of both of them. Yes, please take everything over. Thank you for doing that. We'll support you any way we can to take over all these tasks we don't want to do anymore. But also, okay, let me read that twice before I give that to you.
Yes. I've noticed one of those is in the password book. So, without disclosing too much information, our dad keeps a password book on paper. When we tried to go in there and get access to accounts, because we're starting to pay the bills, we're starting to kind of keep track of their life insurance and their financial planners and all of those people who have online accounts. And we're trying to get access to that. We are just running into so much trouble. First thing is, the password book is like 5% accurate.
And 42 pages long.
It yes, and has things that, like, are not at all related to anything that we have to take over, so it's a lot of sifting through that stuff. Also, when we do try to get into the passwords aren't accurate. So, what we decided we would do is we would go in, you and I, and make some changes to the passwords. So, we sat down last weekend, or Friday, I think it was, and we can't just go in and reset passwords without the two of them, because they have to get the two-factor authentication. So every time, if we can even get into an account, which sometimes we can't because the password isn't correct, But even if we reset the password, then in order to reset a password, you have to get the authentication. So we sat down with the four of us on FaceTime. We have my mom here in Minnesota, but not in my house with me at the time. And I'm over here in Minnesota, and you out there in Montreal, and dad out in California. The four of us FaceTiming. And you started at the Z's, and I started at the A's, and we were working our way to get all the passwords changed and keep track of them in a place that's not in the password book.
Right.
So, one of the things that we ran into early on was when mom came out to Minnesota, she had a new computer, and her new computer hadn't stored all of her passwords, or she hadn't figured out yet how to access the stored passwords. And so she was going in and changing every time she'd log in. She'd have to reset the password. And a lot of times they don't let you reset the password to something you've previously used. So, which she would have to come up with a brand new password every single time. So, like 6 or 7 or 8 iterations of a password before she would write it down and we would have access to it. So that was a challenge. And when we talked to them on the phone, it was you saying, okay, dad, I need you to check your text message from such and such place. Or I would say, okay, mom, where you're looking in your email for a verification code from such and such a place. We had to be very specific because they didn't know what we were doing. We were just like shooting this stuff at them and like, hey, just tell me the code. I don't need a whole litany of explanation of why you have this account or where it is. I just need the code. Just give
No,
me the
it's true.
code.
You were saying that we couldn't do it ourselves without our mom and dad on the phone with us because of the two-factor authentication. I think the bigger picture issue is that both you and I want them to be in control as much as they want to. So they still have
Mm-hmm.
ultimate control over everything they do. I feel like we're doing this as a favor and a support. We're not taking over anything because they can't do it. It's just because they shouldn't
Oh,
have
yeah.
to in their
Oh,
age.
yeah, absolutely. No, they're fully capable. It's just one of the things that we're doing as we're transitioning into this from a kid to a parent kind of role, or what they call sandwich generation. They're fully capable, and we're not taking it from them, but we
Right.
are trying to streamline it in such a way that we won't have to call them or text them or FaceTime them every single
Every single
time
time.
we want to get into an account to make a change or to pay a bill or to do all those things. And one of the reasons that I think it's super important to have the passwords, access to those accounts, is if one of them passes, we won't have their phone. We won't have access to accounts. And if they have accounts that are on auto pay and we can't get into those accounts to say, no, please stop these payments, that'll just keep coming right out of their money for as long as it takes to get all that sorted. So we're kind of being ahead of the game and trying to sort that out beforehand so that we have access to those things.
So we were on the phone with them, on FaceTime with them, a little over 5 hours on Friday, and we got through about 2/3 of their payee list. So
Yeah.
we need to schedule another time to do that
Yes.
and get those two-factor authentications in there.
Yes, and I've thought about this too. We didn't actually change the two-factor authentications. We just made sure we knew what the passwords were. So on the accounts where the password's at enough, we'll be able to get in. On the accounts where they've set up the two-factor authentication, where we have to have the code in order to even log in with the password we already know, then we're going to have to still call them anyway until we get it all sorted.
My plan was to do the things we needed to do to change the password first, and then we go in and
Mhm.
change the contact information for the two-factor authentication for those accounts. So we will have to do that as a step 2 after we make sure all the
Yeah.
passwords are correct. We have access to all of their accounts because there were some accounts that even when we put in forgot password, they didn't send an email refresher. So it's a couple places we have to call to get that straightened out. Once we do all the passwords, I think we can go in, change the contact info. If we're able to change the contact info without the text being sent to the phone, then we can put your phone number, my phone number, and end all the silliness of having to do this cross country international FaceTime code breaker
Yeah, we're in
stuff.
3 different time zones too. So
Right.
you could be sitting down to have lunch and mom and I are here, in the middle of our day. She could be taking a morning nap and dad's over there having breakfast.
Right.
So we can't always coordinate where we're not having meals or off to this and that and the other. So yeah, it's a challenge.
So I think I will feel a lot better about this I want to call it elder abuse, and it's probably not because it's probably automated and nobody's doing it on purpose and they're incentivized to do it anyway.
You're
I'll feel a
giving
lot
them
better
too
about
much
that.
credit.
Uh, yeah, though I think speaking about corporate capitalism is a whole other conversation that we could have. Once that's all settled, I'll feel a lot better about them not paying for things they don't need.
Mhm.
Obviously, if they want to sign up for something new, that's fantastic. We'll put it in we'll make sure that we have access to that so that if they ever want to cancel it, they can cancel it. We can cancel it for them.
One of the other things that we did along these lines is we got some power of attorney documentation filled out. So I went onto LegalZoom and I just basically put in our information into their little form and got one printed out. So what I learned about it is that you don't necessarily even have to have such a document notarized. You do have to have at least two witnesses if you sign without a notary, but we're going to have both of those notarized. One of the fears I think that they had about that was that they were signing their life away and that they
Right.
were signing away all of their rights to make decisions for themselves. And I mean, it kind of made me wonder, like, you and I both know that we have no intention of ripping them off, of taking advantage of them. It's just not how we roll. But I wondered about how scary that must be for families where you don't necessarily have that kind of trust in your children. And even with the trust that they have in us, it was a scary, scary process for them.
Right. Right. We were a very close family when we were young. So it's not as though we had tensions and stuff that lingers. So without that kind of trust in a family, I can't imagine the kids would. No, I can imagine it would be quite difficult for parents to sign a power of attorney without knowing exactly what the limits of that were. I know when our mother, who's a very responsible business person, she had a very successful career in business.
She did.
She looked at the power of attorney, and once she noticed that it was revocable, then she seemed a lot more comfortable about it.
Yeah.
But that was very charming.
Yeah. So now that we have a couple of these things in process, how are you feeling about how their quality of life is going to be moving forward and the role that we play in helping that to happen?
I feel really good about it. They're in really good shape. They can live as long as they want to live. I want to make sure that they have enough, and they have a financial planner who's taking care of that, and they have investments. So I think they will be comfortable for the rest of their lives. This is fantastic. I do still have I'm upset with corporate America or corporate capitalism for taking advantage of older people, even not my mother and father, but people in general. I think there are scammers all over the place, and even people who are not scamming older adults, but still taking advantage of them. So I'm upset about that. And then the other piece, which is the part you were mentioning that I should unpack, and that's my guilt for not living in the same place as either of our parents.
Yeah, say more about that.
I love my life here. I left them. They were both living in California, and I was living 30 miles away, so close enough to go see them whenever. And they were spending a lot of time with the grandkids. And I moved to Montreal 7 years ago, which is a fantastic place to live. My whole life is here. I just love it so much. My kids' lives are here. We never want to leave here. But I did leave them at a time that they were aging. So I know that there's in different cultures. I spent a lot of time around the Japanese culture working for a Japanese company and spending a lot of time in Japan. And I'm only talking about surface what I learned about the Japanese culture, but there's a significant reverence for elderly people, and they are cared for in a very respectful and very deep way. And they're brought into the family home and never left alone and never left for to be hungry or dirty. They're always very, very well cared for. And I see the juxtaposition of I'm just going to go live where I want to live and not care where my parents are aging.
Wow, that's a lot to carry. So, I left California almost 35 years ago. So it's even though I left when we were all quite a bit younger, the reality is still that I'm not there and you're not there. So I kind of
So
wonder if the timing of it is not as big an issue just as the underlying guilt of not being there to do it all for them.
I still feel like mine was bad timing because they did both sort of take turns for the worse when I left. Not because I left, but that was the time in their life where they were really both aging more rapidly.
And if we all had it to do over again, do you think that they would ask you to make a different choice?
No, no, I know they wouldn't.
Mhm.
I know they wouldn't. And if it were reversed, I was living in California. If they wanted to go and retire somewhere other than California, I know they would have done that. They actually did sell our family home 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and they moved quite a bit north. So another hour's drive north away from where I was. And so it was a further trip for me to take, but they didn't stay in California because it was close to me and it's close to my kids. They stayed in California because they wanted to be there. They were looking at other
Mhm.
places. They were looking at Minnesota, where you live, or somewhere warm like Phoenix or Mexico. So I know that if they had decided to go somewhere else, they wouldn't have really given a second thought to needing to stay where I am. So I know that they probably don't hold it against me for leaving,
Oh,
especially
I know
knowing
they don't. One of the things that does make the transition like this easier, though, is all of the technology that's available to us to just take care of things that need to be taken care of.
So our father just got out of surgery. It wasn't outpatient, it was overnight, but it was a quick surgery that a lot of people his age have. And I'm the scientist and I've had some medical training and EMT and PhD in neuroscience. So I'm in the field, I'm in the pharmaceutical industry. So I know a little bit more about the language of medicine than he does. And so he looks to me to interpret all of his medical results, and the technology of having all of his blood tests and urine tests and EKGs and all of those things put immediately online where I can go and see them. How is he doing in this moment while he's in the hospital? That made it so much easier to feel like I was in some way caring for him, even though I wasn't in California. So the technology helps a lot.
Yes, it absolutely does. I think you even learned some things that he didn't even know yet.
Right, right. But he doesn't care as long as they're doing the right thing for him,
Yeah,
and they did.
good. And he's doing well.
And he doesn't seem bitter that no one was there for him.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
Oh,
No, that's good.
isn't it interesting the way that I said that though? That's the underlying assumption, and the fact that he didn't feel bitter was a surprise to me.
Surprised that he didn't feel bitter or surprised that that was your first thought?
Both.
Yeah.
So originally he thought it was outpatient surgery where he would go in, get put under, and drive home later that day. And they wouldn't have let him drive. They wouldn't let anybody drive themselves. And he was very stressed about who he would ask in his new community to drive him to the hospital at 5 o'clock in the morning. There was no shuttle bus available at that hour, that he would have to take either an Uber or have a friend drive him. And he was very distraught about that, who he was going to ask.
And what ended up happening?
They decided to keep him, they told him, due to the nature of the surgery, they were going to keep him overnight and he could drive himself there and back, which he did do.
Amazing. Well,
But
good.
the
I'm
amount
glad
of,
that turned
of
out.
stress he was under while he was thinking who he would ask, it made me feel terrible.
And at the same time, we were both there, available by FaceTime at the drop of a hat. Like, as soon as he called, we picked up. Which,
Yes.
had we been in California, we might not have been as easily accessible to run over to the place where he lives, you know?
Yes, that could be. I'm not saying that this guilt is entirely logical. I'm not sure guilt is ever entirely
Mhm.
logical. It's just
Yeah.
where we are right now. So
Yeah.
we were able to move him 2 months ago from his home, maybe an hour and a half away, to a different home without setting foot in California. The whole thing was organized and executed from afar. And I credit lots of things for that. One is our care for our father. Two is the technology that allowed us to do that. And three is senior transitional moving services.
If you like the content, please like and subscribe and comment. All of those things are really good for the algorithm, which we are trying so hard to build. We want to build a community here because there are important conversations to be had. So we are humbly asking, please do subscribe and like and comment.
Senior transitional moving services.
Yes. Talk about that. What is it?
Someone recommended to me when I was originally looking into moving our father for the first time. They said there are companies whose job it is to transition seniors from their family home, where they're 40 years of accumulated stuff and emotions, and move them into a care community, which is where he is right now. It's a community of people who are older. He's
Yeah,
actually
and
on the
just
younger
need a
side.
little
He
bit
was
of just
3.
need the just some of the extra, like, the cleaning and the cooking is done for them.
Right. Yes.
Complete and utter independence.
They used to call it assisted living. I guess now they call it a senior community, something like that. It's not the 55
Mhm,
plus, it's more care than that. But we moved him. So the company that we found was fantastic. They came in and consulted with my father, and the person who came to his home as a pre-meeting to see if we wanted to hire them was very, very good at what she did, because my father loves to tell
mhm.
stories, and she very respectfully would shut down those stories and say, here's what we have to talk about right now. And he was all on board. And she came in and out within half an hour and said, here's what we need to do, A through Z. Here's what we can do for you. Here's what it's going to cost. And here's how we're going to support your father. And I was so impressed that she didn't get sucked into sitting there for 2 hours, 3 hours talking about every piece of everything in their home, which I think with a lot of people who are leaving a home after 7, 8 years or 40 years, that's a very easy thing to do out of this, the empathy and the interest in caring for that person, listening to the story about every single thing that they're about to have to give up. And she was so good at what she
Mhm.
did that she made them both feel good in half an hour, and she was in and out. And so we hired them, and they came in and sorted everything in the home, from move to the storage unit, move to the apartment, trash it, sell it, or donate it. So five categories. They were color coded. They had teams come in and go through every room in the house and get everything ready. And they had everything shipped to the storage unit, shipped to his house, brought into his house, put back together again. And he moved, and never seen a move go so smoothly.
He's the kind of person that wants to get as much done before he gets the people in to help to do it. And
Yes.
so when they came out to meet, he was already talking about, well, I'll have to go through this room first, and I'll have to go up and make sure that all the clocks that are hung too high to reach, that I get ladders to go and get those. And when they came in, they said, you don't have to do any of that ahead of time. That's what you're hiring us to do. And he was, I think, more willing to listen to them say it than when we said it. Because initially,
100%.
when we were like, you don't have to get the clocks off. Oh, well, I know, but I kind of wanted this and that. But as soon as they came in and said, no, we got this, he settled right into it. And it was just fantastic.
But he has spent all of his adult life being the house person. So he
Mhm.
painted the house with a paintbrush or a roller on the outside. He's
Two
2,500
and a
square
half
foot houses.
stories.
He'd tie himself to the chimney with a rope and then dangle over the side of the house. So he took care of the house, and he took care of the stuff, and he did the decorating, and he did the renovations, and the house was his hobby. Whatever house
Yeah.
they were in was his hobby. So for him to not need emotionally need to take those clocks down from the wall was a huge journey for him. And he did it. And they helped make that happen.
It's incredible. I think just having that outside person opened up the door to being able to accept the help in a way
Yes.
that you just don't do when I feel like when everything is being done within a family, I think we tend to withdraw and keep it quiet, and whatever struggles we're having, we don't want to talk about outside the family. As soon as we brought someone in from the outside and they're like, oh, yeah, we do this all the time, it felt like there was this burden lifted from the emotional weight of it. Like, okay, yes, and at the same time, it's emotional, and we get that, and we'll work with you through that as well. I think that by itself just helped lift a lot of that
For
burden, a
sure.
lot of that pressure.
And to his credit, he was ready to give that emotional burden up. He just needed
Yes.
some way to make that happen. And this senior moving transition company really made that happen.
So now we talked about moving dad from the California house into an assisted community in California. Where's mom?
She decided back in November-ish of last year of 2024 that she wanted to live in an assisted living community. And my father did not want to move at that time. And he said, do you really want to move? And she said yes. And so they decided, okay, she would do that. So you and I flew out there, and we packed up what she would need to live, her toothbrush and a couple of outfits that she had and some memorabilia. And we packed it in boxes and shipped some of it and put some of it in a suitcase. And we flew her out to Minnesota, where you live, and got her safely installed in a beautiful community 2 miles from you.
And I love having her nearby. All I've ever wanted my whole entire life was to have my mom or my dad or both nearby. So it's fantastic for me. It strikes me that the journeys from moving him and moving her were vastly different. And I think two reasons. One is because she went cross country. So she couldn't just pack. We had opted not to pack a moving van to drive. That was going to be too big of a trip for everybody. So her move was done by plane, and she was only moving the things she needed to move with. Whereas his move was done by moving truck, and they were leaving an entire house because when
Right.
she left, she didn't have to sort through all of the things and figure out what she's keeping, what she's tossing, what she's donating, because that was just not a part of the process yet. So it was vastly different. And the way that we got her set up here in Minnesota is I had all new furniture delivered from Amazon or from Wayfair or from IKEA. And it seemed like a really smart idea at the time because that's what I would do living in my own house. But what I hadn't really thought through was that every package that got delivered to her assisted community had to get delivered from the door up into her room. And so part of the process for packages is, you get your little package of Christmas presents or whatever, and then they will deliver them up to the room. And the front desk people were getting these huge shipping containers full of beds and tables and a reclining chair. And they so graciously moved all of those things for about a week. and then, and then as things started to pile up, they called me and they said, it's getting to be a lot. And so I'm thinking we might have to charge to get our maintenance people to come and move these things upstairs. And at that time, I was just like, do what you got to do. How much are you going to charge? She's like, it's going to be about $5 or $10. Like, girl, are you kidding me? I will give you $5 or $10 for every single box if that's what it takes to get those up there. So then the boxes arrived about 2 weeks before she was actually moving in. So we were able to get the keys to her new place 2 weeks before her flight. So my kids and I, 3 of the 4 are young adults, we went into her place every day for about a week and unpacked boxes and put furniture together. We had a toolbox and we had music playing the whole entire time. So the first thing we did was hook up the music because that's what you do, right? And we got the whole place set up. And then I also got a bunch of decor because I didn't want her to feel like she was moving into a sterile environment. And so I got plants and flowers. And I did not know when I got her plants and flowers that she does not like flowers.
And she doesn't want to care for plants.
So we ended up getting plants that she doesn't have that don't die. The butterflies and flowers I had to take with me to my own place. But I think when she moved in, it felt like a home. She had all the toiletries, the shower curtain, and everything was hung. There were things on the wall. So I'm so grateful that we had the time and the capacity to do that for her. And it was just a very different experience moving someone like that than it was moving dad from afar, but actually a whole entire house.
One might wonder why the maintenance department was not used to big shipments of furniture, and that is because she is now living in a suburb of Minneapolis in Minnesota, which is not a very transient place. So people are probably mostly moving into this home from somewhere in the community or somewhere nearby where they can actually drive. She's probably one of
Oh,
the very
yeah.
few people who flew to move to this place. And she did that because that's where you live and because she's got a history in the Midwest and always wanted to go back there, but mostly you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. When she first talked about moving out here, she was talking about, she's looking on like Google Maps and she's thinking, well, maybe I could live in this community because that's near you. And I was like, that's like a 45-minute drive from me. So let's immediately take that off the table because I said, you don't have to live 5 seconds from me, but you need to live closer than 45 minutes because I don't want you to come to Minnesota and then be completely and suddenly isolated because I can't just run down the street to see you. She ended up actually moving into an assisted community that was the closest one to the house that I was living in at the time. And then I moved about 3 miles away. So now it's like a 3-mile difference. It is so nice and convenient because I can get all of her meds at the pharmacy while I'm going to the pharmacy. I'm going to see her multiple times a week anyway. And it's just been fantastic to see her multiple times in a week. Oh,
I think you're
compared to the 30 years that I lived in a completely different state and couldn't see them except for maybe once a year when we traveled.
one of the things that makes me feel better about society in general is the quality of the care that both of them are getting. They're in very different kinds of places. Our mother's in a place that's somewhat religious and a little bit bigger and a little bit more affordable. It's in the middle of the country. It's not in California, which is ridiculously expensive. Our father is in sort of a higher end. He calls it froofy food every day.
He's got froofy food.
And in both of their places, the level of care they're getting, and I'm not talking about medicines or changing bandages or, you know, getting them dressed necessarily. I'm talking about people who just walk into their apartment and say, "Are you okay? What do you need? I can walk with you here," or "I know you're having trouble with paperwork," or whatever it is. And they're just so respectful, but also kind and friendly. I remember my father was going to get a pedicure because, why not? And he heard from someone that in the community he's not allowed to walk around without shoes on. He couldn't wear slippers in the hallway, and so he went to his friend at the front desk who works there and who knows all of the residents by name, of course. And he said to her, "I know I can't wear slippers to the pedicurist who's in the main floor of the building." And she said, "You know what? I'm in charge of this place, and if you want to come down barefoot in a swim trunks, you can do that." So it's just
Oh, no, I
friendly
didn't hear
people
that.
and really caring about him and interacting with him in a way that he likes. And same thing for our mother. So I do think that they're both in a place that is safe and a place that they're getting the kind of care that they need specifically.
So, a number of years ago, I was in a job where I was regularly visiting people at a variety of nursing homes, is what they called them at the time. And I remember thinking to myself at that time, I never want to live in a place like this, ever. And where we've come to now in this day and age is that these communities are not that. There are some that they always smelled like urine, like, every single time I went in there, and I was thinking, "Does that mean that people are having accidents and you're not cleaning it up? Or is just everyone having accidents in their rooms and they're not getting changed? Or, like, what is going on here?" I do not experience that in any of the places that I visit now. The other problem that I had was one of them, every single time I went to visit, they had moved her to a different room because it felt more like a hospital setting back then. And it just never felt like home, and the rooms were set up like hospital rooms. This is very much like independent living, but with the help that they need for things like cooking, cleaning, if they need help, just like an assist with the shower, that, they can have just someone who sits outside the bathroom, and just in case if there's an issue, then there's somebody available. If they have falls, there are people and equipment to help get them up if they have a fall. So it's just, if I got to a point where that level of care was necessary for me, I would totally do it. If I could live in a place like my parents are living in right now, one or the other, and they're
Um,
very different from each other, but they're vastly different from the way it used to be.
the level of care is significantly better. And I think the attitude is significantly different that we're not just caring for these bodies until they pass. It really is creating a life, socialization, and activities, and even volunteer opportunities for the seniors to give back to the community. I love that because they're not just feeling
Mhm.
like they're taking from the community, they're giving back to the community. So that's a big, big deal. And the situation has changed with regard to senior care. It's also a mindset shift where our father, my entire life, I couldn't have imagined him ever agreeing to go to a
No.
senior care facility. And when we started talking about this after my mother left and moved into her own beautiful home, we were talking with my father about it. And even at that point, he didn't want to come because he still had this memory of it's a
Mhm.
hospital setting. You're going to be in a bed with a traction or, whatever. And the
And
doctors are going
ignored,
to come in.
largely ignored all day.
Yes, exactly, and unable to get out of bed and unable to walk down and go to the movies or whatever. Well, it's just a completely different place, but he still had in his mind that old school nursing home or assisted living facility, and it's completely different, and the minute he went and toured, he was in. He was like, "No, it was nice, and he loved
Mhm.
it, and he's actually moved back to a community where he lived before, so the people in the community are also old friends of his. We have a senior community, maybe a block and a half from where we live, and my daughter, who walks around the community quite a bit, she passed it by, and in the backyard, she could see over the fence that there's a beautiful little garden with a river and a bridge and a bunch of chairs. And the seniors would sit outside in the summertime because we live where there's snow and they only do it in the summertime. When my daughter was maybe 17, 18 years old, she would say to me, "Mom, that looks so depressing. They're not going anywhere. They're not talking amongst themselves." And I sat down with her and I was trying to give her some perspective on this, and maybe it's just because I'm older and my parents are older, but I said to her, "Isn't it lovely that they are probably not very mobile, they don't have to go anywhere, everything they need is brought to them, they're with their friends, and lovely to be with people who you don't feel you have to talk with, and they're in an outdoor setting, soaking up the sun that's quiet and lovely and has florals and trees." I could see in her mind this shifted that, yes, for a 20-year-old to sit in the backyard quietly with a bunch of people and do nothing is miserable.
Yeah.
But when you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, that's just lovely.
Well, and the pace of life changed. So even from your daughter's age now, which is in her young 20s, to our age, which is in our mid 50s, to our parents' age, which is a little bit over 50s, the pace of life has changed. So I remember when I was visiting in the nursing facilities, I would call them up and I would say, "Hey, could I come for a visit on such and such day, like on a Thursday?" And they would say to me, "Oh, no, I can't have you come on a Thursday. I'm going grocery shopping that morning." And at that time, when grocery shopping was the thing that I would squeeze in between an 8-hour day of work and 4 hours of baseball, I did not get it. Like, what do you mean? The grocery shopping, you'll have that done by like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking about coming at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And now in my 50s, I totally get it because there are times all of those things take so much more energy. And I can only imagine what kind of energy that's going to take when they're in our 70s and 80s and 90s. But I understand now that I don't wanna have more than one big thing on my calendar in a day. I mean, I can do it if I have to, but I really don't wanna. Like, if I'm gonna be recording with my sister, then don't plan to come for dinner that night because I cannot do both.
I'm a strong believer in the more you do, the more you can do, but that doesn't mean you have
Mm.
to do.
Oh, we
So I
should talk sometime about the slow movement.
yes, yes, because in my mind, I'm certainly not there yet. I have a 12-year-old and he's extremely active, still needs a lot from
Mhm.
me. And so I do a lot of stuff. I work for myself, which is a huge I used to say when I was working for corporations, I used to say my life would work really, really well if I didn't have a job. Right. So I do
Yes.
work right now, but it's not a job where I have to sit somewhere and do something or nothing for 8 hours, 9 hours a day. So my
Yeah.
life does work very well right now. I still feel probably pretty busy relative to where I will be in 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm not quite 10 years older than you, but I feel 10
No.
years older than you, and I'm okay with it. I'm totally cool with the pace of life that I'm living right now, and I love it. And I think we are settling quite uncannily comfortably into our roles in the sandwich generation of being parents both to our kids and to our parents. And let me just tell you this, I would not be comfortable as I am now if we weren't doing it together. Oh, any final thoughts on this topic of just parenting parents?
When I was a little bit younger and I was having more peers who were taking care of their parents and their kids, there seemed to be this resentment of I still have young kids and I then have to take care of my parents. And there's this resentment of being sandwiched and being overburdened and having too many things to do. And it could be a consequence of the fact that you and I have created lives for ourselves that work for us
Mhm.
and give us space to do what we want to do and what we need to do versus what we feel obliged to do to a corporation. But
Yeah.
I think I do not have that resentment of being squeezed between 2 obligations. I love raising kids and I love caring for my parents. As easy as it is from doing it from afar, I really do I feel honored and lucky to be able to care for them.
I don't feel a resentment. I think that the access that we have not only to each other, but also the access that we have to technology and the decision to move both of them into communities that have a little bit of extra help. I think all of those lead to a scenario where we have some tasks to do, but more of my time is spent enjoying being in the presence of my mom than it is spent doing tasks for my mom.
Hey, Olive, do you like your mom's content?
I do. Do you like it, Kiwi?
I really do. I like my mom's content.
It's
Hey,
amazing.
I can subscribe, please.
Like and subscribe.